Hi everyone, this is Koinzell here. So today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm splitting up what I wanted to do for Yelan Vape with Yoimiya instead of Plothole. I'm splitting it up into two different videos, and I'll talk more about it here. But basically, you'll see that the agenda here is we are really talking about Yoimiya Vape mechanics, ICD, the vape comps options, comparing some of the vape comps as well. So basically, I'm splitting into two videos. This video, the first video, is focused on explaining Yoimiya Vape mechanics and comparing Vape and Geo Vape, so as to set the entire understanding correct. Because if I don't split this, it's gonna be another 15-minute to 1 hour video for the Yoimiya Yelan Vape, or rather Yoimiya Yelan Vape video or math guide. So that's why we are splitting it. Now, what we are going to cover here, like I just said earlier, right? Vape, the comp itself, the comparison, as well as ICD/vape mechanics. And in this case, the vape comparison will be through actual footage because I have C6 Xingqiu, I have Yoimiya, so I can do all the actual testing in game. I can show you guys the actual figures in comparison. So that will be the comparison, and I'll do a quick summary. Then we'll talk about what's coming next, which is very obvious what's next, right? Which is the actual Yelan figures. Here we are just really talking about Yoimiya and her vape mechanics, because her vape mechanics is not that straightforward. It's not like Plothole who can just vape every charge attack. Alright, so let's look at the vape mechanics itself. Unlike Plothole, Yoimiya has 2.5 ICD on 2.5 seconds of ICD on her normal attacks, which means that she can't vaporize every hit of her normal attack. So the way ICD works is that you have a timer, and for normal attacks, right, if you do 3 hits, it will reset the ICD. So it's either 2.5 seconds or 3 hits, whichever comes first. In Yoimiya's full normal attack combo, this means that the first hit of her N1, her N3 and M5 can be the ones vaporizing if you're not interrupted at all. Which is not too bad, right? Because for her N3 and M5, these are the harder hits, so you vape on the harder hits. Sounds good. But the moment your normal attack combo is interrupted, you will not be vaping your N3 and M5, which is quite a big DPS loss, and when you look at the figures, you'll know what I mean. And the other thing is, interruption can be many different sources, right? It can be taking damage, causing knockback or knockdown, getting freeze by your enemies, etc. So this is why I would recommend a shielder for her, and I think most folks will have heard that you need a shielder with Yoimiya, and this is the reason why, especially if you're using Vape. I mean, even without Vape, right, because of the fact that her hard hits are on N3 and 5, you do want to complete her NA combo without getting interrupted, even without Vaporize. But for VV Vape, you will need a Pyro Shielder. You have no other slots, right? You need a Pyro Shielder. You have either Yelan or Xingqiu together with Yoimiya plus 8 animal. So the only last Pyro option remaining will be a Shielder. So it's either Toma or C4 Yanfei. Xingqiu is not a good option. Xingqiu is going to steal your vapes like crazy. And Geo Vape will be Zhongli. Okay? But even with Shu, you still have to look out for freeze. Example, the current floor 12 line up with the pesky hoarders, treasure hoarders that throw hydro and cryo bombs, right? If you focus on the Nobushi at the start of floor 12-1, the two of them from the left and right corner or edge are going to freeze you. It's as simple as that. So you have to take them out first. So these are little things that you need to take note of for Yoimiya Vape. Yoimiya trying to do Vape. And also, mobs that push you out of field effects is going to be bad. For example, Primo Jovishat pushing you out of C2 Kazuha effect. I know not everyone has C2 Kazuha, but I'm just trying to use this as an example for you guys to understand. Field effects can be anything, right? It can be bandits, Q. That's a field effect as well. So I hope this simple explanation is clear enough. Let's move on to talk about two vape variants for her. To be honest with you guys, I'm not a huge fan of vape for her. I personally prefer mono pyro, but mono pyro does require higher investments to do well. In fact, if you have C6 Yoimiya, then all the more you shouldn't do vape comp in my opinion, because C6 Yoimiya really messes up her vapes. your entry and 5 vaping is not gonna happen. Okay, so let's talk about the Vapecoms for Yoimiya. Okay, VV Vapecom, there's a lot for me to talk about, but just focus on this here first. Okay, so Kazuha, obviously budget is sucrose, but Kazuha makes a huge difference really on the buffs. And you have Yelan, you have Yoimiya, Pew Pew Pew, I can't resist myself, okay? And Pyro Shooter. So Pyro Shooter, you have Toma for shooting Pyro setup, Sword setup, Mysterio Vapes, Yanfei for shield support. It's harder to do your Pyro Sword accurately on Yanfei if you want to do it after the Kazuha Q. Okay? But one good thing is that she doesn't steal Vapes. So not using Rainbow, as I've mentioned previously, Yoimiya needs a shooter or storm resistant interaction provider, which limits her options. If you have seen my Yelan VV Vidcom, you know that this looks very familiar, right? Basically, Hu Tao is replaced by Yoimiya, Amber is replaced by Toma. This means that there is a chance for Toma to steal Vapes, although with C2 Yelan this may not happen. Actual testing with C0 and C2 Yelan required, okay? Another thing to consider is Yoimiya's ICD and Toma's ICD. As long as they don't clash, you wouldn't have a vape stealing situation, technically speaking. Think about it, because like if both of them are on ICD and you proc Toma's Q earlier, you won't have a scenario where Toma will steal Yoimiya's vape actually. It's actually pretty manageable. Okay, so the chance, I would say in general, the chance for Toma to steal vapes from Yoimiya is lower than from Hu Tao. And currently with Kazuha Hydro Q plus a C6 Xingqiu, it's actually very manageable for Yoimiya in terms of vapes not being stolen by Toma. And I'll show a very quick footage later. I've tested it at least 10 plus times. Toma did not steal my vapes. In fact, the 10 plus times what happened was the pyro swirling. And I'll talk more about that later, which is right now. So for Toma and Yanfei, if you want to do a pyro swirl after Kazuha Q, it's pretty hard timing wise. Okay, let me just add one header here, okay, so that's clear. Pyro swirl. For Toma, right, one option is that you use Kazuha E right after M1 procs Toma Q, but before Xingqiu's Q hits. Now you can imagine how difficult that is, right? Just think about the timing. For Yanfei, it's really tough to do Pyro Sword reliably. So alternate solution, right, and one that I personally prefer, is you can start with the Pyro Sword then Kazuha Q, which does give you a lower uptime on Kazuha and VV buff on Yoimiya, provided your Kazuha Q did not swirl. Just move this, yeah? So what do I mean by this? Your Kazuha Q swirling. Remember, even if Kazuha Q is infused with another element like Hydro, there is still a animal damage being done through each of his Q proc or tick. Each tick of his Q, along with the elemental infusion, there is still animal damage. So you can still do Pyro Sword if there's Pyro on the enemies. So if Kazuha's Hydro Q triggers a Pyro Sword, obviously there's no uptime issue on Yoimiya, because you started with a Pyro Sword first to ensure that your Yoimiya, maybe like the first few seconds of it, has the Pyro Sword buffs. If from that duration, from Kazuha's Q being cast all the way until your first Pyro Sword ends, if your Kazuha Hydro Q managed to trigger a Pyro Sword, you will not have an uptime issue, right? On your Yoimiya. Because Yoimiya's E lasts for 10 seconds. Pyro Sword lasts for 8 seconds. Or rather, the buffs from Kazuha based on Sword last for 8 seconds. So one thing to note is that Toma's Q actually increases the chance of a Pyro Sword from Kazuha Hydro Q, because you got more Pyro application. So it actually helps, and he doesn't steal your vape if your ICD there's no clashing, right? So that's actually good. And I'll show you guys the actual video comparison or the footage comparison later. In fact, in my rotation, right, I'm using Yoimiya E, the initial stance pyro application, which means the animation where she sort of like charges her pyro bow with, or her arrows with pyro. That animation does no damage, but it will apply pyro in melee range. So I actually use that to apply the pyro for the Kazuha Hydro Q to trigger the Pyro Sword. But obviously limited to melee range, and is also specific to Kazuha because Kazuha's Q does a big clear on the enemy elemental aura. So allowing your Yoimiya stance Pyro to apply, and in that short interim between the Hydro Q tick, the first tick doing the proc. I'll show you guys the video later so it's clear. Yeah, so that's what I have to say for Vape. Okay, a lot of it is on the Pyro Sword because yeah, that's where a big part of the challenge is. In terms of optimizing. Okay, and I'm not saying that it's difficult to do Pyro Sword, I'm saying in terms of optimizing. Now let's talk about Geo Vape next. So Geo Vape obviously you have no anymore. You have Yunjing to do buff, you have Yelan, you have Yoimiya and Zhongli. Why am I using Yunjing together with Zhongli? For Geo Resonance. Simple as that, because Geo Resonance is pretty decent. You get a damage bonus while you're shielded. Technically speaking, you could also go Rainbow and even put animal character here and use Yoimiya's Q to do the Pyro Sword, but once you have Yoimiya's Q there, it can mess up your reactions. Okay, just bear that in mind. But maybe it might work out well if, for example, it somehow helps Yelan to vaporize some of the other hits. But I'll rather test that when Yelan is out rather than do the math, because that's also a rainbow comp. And I'll say that there are no real flex options for this comp, no flex options per se, because without Yunjin's buff and only shield and resistance threat, it's actually very tough to keep Yoimiya's Vape optimized. Now, another option you can think of is, instead of using a Zhongli shielder, maybe use someone like Diona. You have C6 with the EM buff, you have LG for the end with more EM buffs, but that's like a melt comp. That's a different comp altogether. Okay, that's a different comp altogether. Like, if you want to forgo shield, forgo healing, you could use an animal character like I said, to do the pulls, like Kazuha do the pulls, to give you the buff, etc. But, no heals, no shield, and your Yoimiya Q may mess up reactions. So there's a lot of nuances to optimizing the comp. That's the reason why I'm using a Geo Vape comp here, which just makes it very nice and simple and comfortable. It's a high comfort comp. It's also unfortunate that Yunjin's normal attack buff procs based on normal attack damage dealt, which means it can't work for C6 Yelan's 6x normal attacks because it's 6x normal attacks triggering charge attack damage, the breakthrough bulbs. So yeah, it's unfortunate Yunjin does not buff Yelan, which should tell you that in a Geo Vape comp, Yelan's damage is going to be lower than in the VV Vape. Very, very straightforward stuff. Now, unlike Kazuha, who can buff both Yelan and Yoimiya, Yunjin only buffs Yoimiya. So like I said, yeah, this is exactly what I was saying. So same applies for Xingqiu in Geo Vape comp. This is not specific to Yelan, this is just Geo Vape comp. Okay? In fact, for... sorry, that's a different thing altogether. Excuse me for that. Zhongli provides very high comfort and universal resistance threat from his shield that helps mitigate the loss of VV's very strong effect. Because VV is 40% resistance reduction, Zhongli is 20%. But after the 0%, the resistance reduction is halved, so the actual impact is not too bad. Honestly speaking, it's not too bad. Geo Resonance also gives you damage bonus when shielded, so that's the reason why I'm talking about a Geo Vape comp here. Now let's talk about let's look at the more interesting stuff, right? Because all of this is just my analysis. Now let's look at the actual comparison. I'll show you guys my character stats, then the rotation. Remember, this is not a damage showcase, okay? This is Vape variant comparison. It's not a damage showcase. Or in case some people start to say, oh, this is not a realistic damage showcase, your supports are so stacked. Well, this is a variant comparison, okay? Wait. Oops. I should have shown that. Okay, never mind. Let us go look at the rotation. Okay, so this is my Yunjin stats. 2.5, almost 2.6k defense with 4-piece Husk effect active. Provenance Lance R5 as a weapon. Constellation C6. Talents 1912. Okay, but buff is coming from the burst, the most important buff. And these are her stats. So we have 56.3 CR for the sake of her bonus, and 195.9 E, 195.5 ER, almost 200 ER. But she really needs that high amount of ER. This is my Xingqiu 1965 attack. When I'm using Skyward Blade because I need someone to use my R5 Skyward Blade. Simple as that. 4-piece emblem, and also because I don't have PJC. C6 Xingqiu and 112 on the talents. It's amazing how PJC has consistently evaded me. 52.3 CR, 137.9 crit damage, almost 200 ER. That's my C6 Xingqiu with a Skyward Blade. Next is my Yoimiya. We have 2557 attack and 75 EM, which is helpful, right? Because it increases the vaporized damage. Crit rate 67.4, crit damage 231.2%. ER doesn't really matter for her. Pyro damage, unless you. But for vape, I'm not a fan of using her Q for vape comp. 4-piece Shiminawa, R5 Thundering Pulse, C3 Yoimiya. Yeah, not C6, just C3. Talents, we have double crown, crowd attack, and crowd E. So all out on her damage, on her normal attack damage. Next we have Zhongli, 40.5k HP. CRCD, this is my ratio. I know it's a bit off, but it's because I'm doing hybrid build. I'm not using a crit circlet, I'm using a HP circlet. Okay, R2 Homa, because my R5 Homa is on Hutao. And 2-piece Nobliss with 2-piece Petra, C6. Talents is 10, 12, 12. 10 because I used to play him as a physical DPS. Obviously for this current build, you don't need 10 on the normal attack. Okay, so those are my Geo Vape stats. Let's look at the rotation next. Okay, so we are placing the Zhongli pillar away so that it doesn't interrupt the reaction. You'll notice that I do 1 and 1 with Yunjing so that we do the hydro application, ensure that we vape the first hit so that your string is working well. Now let me just slow this down. Okay, we do it as slow playback so I can show you guys the figures. Like I said, Yunjing does 1 and 1 so as to do hydro application. I'm using attacks here just to make sure that Jovisha is not in his high defense mode or the resistance reduction mode. High resistance mode. Okay, ignore the normal attacks here. So first hit with vaporize is 42862, second hit is 25051 without vaporize. This is N2 and N3 is over here. N3 vaporize with 88490. Next you have 2 hits from N4. Okay, M5 103 103461. Okay, this is the damage on a Vape comp. Geo Vape comp. Okay, so that is one whole string. I will compare the whole normal attack combo between the two rotations or the two comps. We'll look at the VV Vape comp stats now. So this is my Kazuha. I have 936 EM on him now with 1.5k attack. CRCD is 1 to 2, not very high, but you know, this is full EM. I still managed to do a little bit of hybrid, so I'm very happy with this result. ER is 144.7. Okay, weapon is R5 Freedom Sword. This is the best weapon to R5, honestly speaking. Then the artifacts, we have 4-piece VV, obviously. Constellation is C3. Talent 6, 12, 9. Okay, Xingqiu, no change really, other than the attack being higher because of Pyro Resonance. Right, we have Yoimiya and Toma. This is Pyro Resonance. Yeah, like I said, Yoimiya and Toma. Pyro Resonance, 2.68 attack. Everything else is the same as the Geo stats, Geo Vape stats. Exactly the same. Okay. Next, Yoimiya. Everything else is the same except for the attack. The attack is now 2790, again because of Pyro Resonance. Everything else is the same. But remember, C2 Kazuha gives 200 EM and that's not shown right now. So everything the same for Yoimiya. Next is Toma. So Toma, my max HP is not that high, and there's a reason why. Because you need to go CR, you need to go ER. We have almost 193 ER here with 46.2 CR for Favonius Lance. So because of the need to invest in all these other stats, his HP is not as high as I would have liked. Now 4-piece Nobliss, C6 Toma, talents we are at 112. Because you need both of these talents for his shield to be strong enough to not break all the time. Okay, so these are my VV Vape with Toma stats. Let's look at the rotation itself and the damage. Then we will do a final damage comparison. Okay, so we start with the Pyrosaur. Like I said, that's the easier option. And I want to show you guys the hang on. Let me slow the blade back. Look at the Kazuha Q. It wipes all the elemental aura. We use this 9232 here. This 9232 figure here is a Pyrosaur. Kazuha's Hydro Q performing a Pyrosaur. There's not enough time to look at the aura here because it got applied and wiped instantly. Yoimiya's E applied a Pyro, which then gets cleared instantly by Kazuha's Q. The first tick. This is the 9232 figure. Okay. Now, there's a very small figure here which is 16019. This is actually the first hit with the Vaporize. It did not crit. Yeah. I took crit rate foot plus 20% CR, no plus damage, and still it did not crit. Okay, so no worries. When I do that damage comparison, I'll multiply my crit damage accordingly. So this is the second hit of the M1. This is the first hit that did not crit. Sorry, did not Vaporize. No. What am I talking about? The first hit that Vaporized but did not crit. Okay. Next, check this out. 146534. That is the N3 Vaporizing. Very nice damage, right? The N3 is already dealing more than the M5 with Vaporize on VV Vape. And it's a lot more for the metal. It's 146k versus 103k. Now let's look at the final hit. Sorry, pause a little early. 160521. Vaporized. This is very nice. And remember what I was saying about Primo Jovichette pushing you out of your field effect? This is exactly what happened, but we were lucky enough that the last hit, the M5 Vape, it fired while we were still at the very edge of Kazuha's C2 effect. So we got pushed out now, and obviously I have to move my Yoimiya again. But one dash should be sufficient for us to go to the whole M1 and N3 M5 combo again. So that's not so bad. But I hope that the good thing about this video is that it really helps me talk about the few things that I've talked about in the earlier analysis session, right? Like you getting pushed out your field effect, the Kazuha Hydro Q performing a Pyrosaur, what else? And also the Vaporize hits the damage itself. The damage is a lot more than Geo Vape. And I'll show you guys the actual comparison as well as the reasons why. It's a bit skewed right now because of how well invested my Kazuha is, to be honest. Well, my engine is also very well invested, right? With the high CI and high ER, I still have 258, 6 or 4 defense. So it's not like I am doing an unfair comparison. It's just simply the difference between a potential of a 5-star and a 4-star character. I put it that way. Now let's go back to the analysis itself. Alright. So let's look at the figure that I accidentally showed earlier. Okay, hang on, sorry. Okay, seriously, okay, finally it's working. It's due to this stupid function on Excel. I need to find a way to go and disable that. Okay, this is the damage figures that you saw earlier. Like I said, that one figure that did not do a crit, I have multiplied by crit damage. The rest of it we did crit. So these are all the hits with the vape. Okay, let me do this. Let me make the vape figures really clear, yeah? Okay, so that you guys know. Now, obviously this is the ideal scenario where the right vapes all happen. And VV Vape does a lot more damage. Total, we have about 508k from just one normal attack combo. versus Geo Vape, which is 367k. So the difference is about VV doing about 38% more than Geo. So it's quite significant, I'll say. Now, but bear in mind, the above is just the first normal attack combo, right? So C6 Engine's attack speed buff is not included. You do need more attack combos for your attack, for her attack speed buff, the C6 attack speed buff, to truly make a difference. But if you saw my video, Jovisha was almost dead. I don't even need to complete 2 attack normal attack combos to kill him. So if your Yoimiya already hits hard, then it's harder to get the full benefit from C6 Engine. That's the main disadvantage of a attack speed buff, really. You need more time for you to really make a difference. I mean, obviously, you still hit faster, but it's not fast enough such that there's additional 1 more hit. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to say here. So you need a longer period of attacking to really make a difference. Now, you'll notice that the Vape hits really hard, and that's because of C2 Kazuha giving 200 EM to Yoimiya. Okay? Yeah. And this is with Xingqiu. With Yelan's A4 passive, the damage figures above will be higher. So I'm really looking forward to trying it out with Yelan as well. So let me do a quick summary of this entire video as well as the comparison for you guys. Do you guys see how long the video has taken? It's a good thing that I split it, right? Alright, let's talk about the summary. Now, damage buffs. C2 Kazuha plus Freedom Swan will definitely buff significantly more than Yunjin for Yoimiya, as can be seen here. Right? Make a difference of damage figure. But you gotta remember that my Kazuha is very stacked. He's using an R5 Freedom Swan, he has C3, which means he has the C2 effect. Even if I go level Iron Steen, I go craft an Iron Steen and level it to level 90 for the purpose of the testing, I still have C2 Kazuha. So until Hoyoverse finally implements Constellation Toggling, I can't really test out C0 Kazuha with Iron Steen. Okay? But I am quite confident that C0 Kazuha with Iron Steen, Yunjin will buff slightly more, assuming the artifacts are equally optimized. So for F2P, I'll say Yunjin provides a decent buff compared to Kazuha. But if you have someone who did spend on this game, VV has a higher damage potential. It has a higher damage ceiling, especially along with C6 Toma giving you the damage buff. And C6 Toma works on Yelan's C6 effect as well. So that's another thing to consider. So that's damage buffs. So that's why I wanted to state it clearly that my Kazuha is stacked. Okay, my Kazuha is well invested. That's why VV Vape has such a difference. If your Kazuha is not as well invested as mine, but your Yunjin is, then the difference won't be that big. Okay, the difference won't be that big for Yoimiya damage anyway. The bigger problem about Geo Vape is really that Yunjin doesn't buff Yelan's damage. If for F2P player, I would say most likely your Yoimiya will do slightly more damage in a Geo Vape rather than a VV Vape. If you don't have all those stuff that I mentioned, and if your Yunjin is as invested as mine. Oh, and sorry, this is assuming C6. You buff slightly more as C6, assuming your full attack combo string, yeah? The damage figures should also be higher, because if you look at the non-Vape figures, it's only slightly behind. So, sorry, let me clarify. Even without C6 Yunjin, the Geo figure here should still do more than the VV Vape figure. It's because I have R5 Freedom Swan, right? R5 Freedom Swan buffs normal attack, gives attack buff. So if you only have a Kazuha, C0 Kazuha with an Iron Sting, I honestly don't think that Yunjin damage will be lower. Yunjin that giving you Yoimiya's damage with Yunjin's buff will be higher in Geo Vape comp if it's C0 Kazuha with Iron Sting. Okay? Now let's talk about shields and Vape optimization. Geo Vape is obviously very comfortable with Zhongli Shield, plus Yunjin buffing all her normal attacks, which means that a messed up Vape, which is example your Vape not being on your entry on 5, is also a lot more forgiving in Geo Vape than VV Vape. But in the first place, with a well-built Zhongli Shield, you're not going to lose the Vape on entry or M5 unless you get frozen by enemies. Then if that's the case, then you have to set up your position correctly before you start attacking. Now, all of this is also assuming that you don't have Raiden Sword on Kazuha or C6 Toma, because if you have those, remember the N2 and N4s without Vape are still dealing more than Geo. If you have C6 Toma as well as, like, you know, Freedom Sword on Kazuha. But if you don't, then obviously you need to indulge more. And if for some reason you ruin your Vapes, it's more forgiving in Geo Vape than PV Vape. Now, one thing to note is that both Toma and C4 Yanfei needs high investment on ER and CR for Fervonius, thus their shields are not as strong. And you need Fervonius for Yelan. You need Fervonius on other characters for Yelan. Let me put it that way. So their shields are not as strong, and in fact, if your Toma talent levels are not base level 9, chances are very high that one early heavy hit will break his shield and completely ruin your VV Vapes, which in turn affects your overall damage. So do you see that for VV, for Yoimiya, sorry, not VV, for Yoimiya in a Vape comp, shield actually affects your damage quite significantly. It has a very big factor. Okay, I hope this is clear. In fact, I was quite frustrated with my Toma previously before his talents hit both at level 12. Because a early heavy hit from any Lawacher will actually break his shield and cause your Yoimiya to be interrupted. I'm serious, especially a high level Lawacher. So yeah, you gotta invest in your Toma. Okay, you really have to invest in your Toma if you want a VV Vape comp to work with Toma. Next, difficulty. VV Vape is really slightly harder to pull off in terms of the double sword, especially the Pyro Sword. And of course, that in turn leads to whether you get the 100% Pyro Sword Kazuha buffs uptime on Yoimiya. Okay? But if you follow my rotation earlier, you'll see that it's still pretty doable with Kazuha Hydro Q plus C6 Xingqiu. What I cannot say for sure is the C2 Yelan. Sorry, it's not C2 Yelan, C0 Yelan. So, but C0 Yelan I think should be in a slightly better spot than C0 Hu Tao, for example, in terms of the Pyro Sword difficulty, not in terms of their overall damage, etc. Okay? But anyway, although it's slightly harder to pull off, it's still doable. That's just one thing that I want to call out. So, crowd pull and AoE. There is a big advantage that VV Vape has over Geo Vape, and it's not just damage ceiling, damage potential, it's crowd pull, which in turn reduces your Yelan E cast time as well. Also, thanks to Kazuha, you have decent AoE in VV Vape. His Q providing you the AoE, his pull pulling the enemies together for Yelan E to be applied to more enemies at the same time without wasting too much time traveling around or dashing around. So that's awesome, alright? Geo Vape on the other hand is very single target focused. What does Yunjin do? Buff your single target. What does Songli do? Buff your single target and give you a shield. So there's no one giving you AoE damage, because even Yelan, although Yelan has AoE and single, majority is still on single. Like 59% is still on single. If you don't have C6 Yelan, it's about 59% on single, 41% on the AoE. So Geo Vape has one big weakness in my opinion, and it's not the damage potential or the damage ceiling, it's the fact that it's very, very single target focused. Whereas you have decent AoE in VV Vape. Because damage potential or damage ceiling, that is still like a bit of the Dolphin or Wheel territory, right? As an F2P player, Geo Vape versus VV Vape, at least for Yoimiya's damage wise, it's okay. It's very competitive between the two. But crowd pull and AoE is a big problem that the Geo Vape has. So the conclusion basically, VV Vape is high risk, high reward. You get a weaker shield, you get your Pyro Sword is harder to pull off, although still doable. But you do get a higher damage ceiling, up to almost 38%. I'm not saying that I have the highest damage possible, not yet for sure. But you get what I'm trying to say here. And Geo Vape sacrifices that damage ceiling for higher comfort. And that damage ceiling is only achievable through spending, right? So for F2P players, the damage ceiling is not an issue. So you get higher comfort. Let me make that clear. This is applicable for whales or dolphins. for F2P, VV Vape, just type that in. For F2P, VV Vape is rather Geo Vape may actually do slightly better for Yoimiya damage versus VV Vape, but you still have the AoE issue. Okay. Should I just call it over focus? So really, which to use depends on your level of investment for the characters across the two comps and your risk appetite. Because I cannot say for sure that Geo Vape is better. I cannot say for sure that VV Vape is better. It really depends on your risk appetite, whether you prefer higher comfort level, and how invested your characters are. Like you have invested Yunjin but your Toma is not invested, then you should go for a Geo Vape. Especially if your Kazuha is also not like super invested per se. Your Kazuha is something like C0 with Iron Sting. I shouldn't use the word invested. It's more like if your Kazuha is F2P, then all the more the Geo Vape comp will be better if your Yunjin is more invested than your Toma. Okay, so this is the conclusion that I have for you guys. Personally, I'll try out both comps when Yelan is out. Okay, I'll try out both comps when Yelan is out. And since Yelan damage in Plothole VV Vape is pretty much going to be similar to her damage in Yoimiya VV Vape, with some slight differences depending on whether you're a C6 Toma or whether you want to consider Plothole's passive starting from the second rotation, etc. Because Yoimiya's passive doesn't really help. Yoimiya gives attack buff, and pyro damage buff, so it doesn't help Yelan. But Plothole gives the 12% CR, so that helps. But again, starting from second rotation. So that's why I did not consider that in my math as well. So all in all, I will do the Geo Vape comp for Yelan Math next, so that there is a bit of a difference in the figures. You guys can see in a Geo setup versus a VV setup, even if it's different characters, different main DPS characters, you can sort of see the difference that it implies for Yelan. Okay. So for the Yelan video series, just to recap, we finished the Plothole VV Vape Fusion Taser, and Yoimiya Geo Vape is going to be next. And after this, either I do one more, which is the Overvape Hyper Carry, where we try to focus on vaporizing some of Yelan's damage as well, i.e. forward vape, not reverse vape. That is something I've been thinking about also. So I may do one more comp video, and then we move on to weapon. Yeah. Okay. So let me know in comments if there any specific math you want. Join me over at Twitch, where I answer almost every question in there too. Especially because I don't have time to really go through all YouTube comments, but at least when I'm streaming on Twitch, right? If you ask me in chat, I'll be able to see and answer accordingly. Okay. Thanks everyone for watching. If you like the content, remember to like the video and click subscribe for more. And bye.